Hi, this is Brian Wilson. When I was around, 10, 12 years old, my mom and I were walking to the market one day, and a dog started barking at us. And I went, Mom, why is that dog barking at us? She goes, Son, because some dogs pick up vibrations from people and not from other people. And when they pick up bad vibrations, they bark. And so I said, well, what about good vibrations? She said, well, sometimes they pick up good vibrations. And so one day I was with Mike Love at my house in Beverly Hills, and I told him I had a song that goes, bom, boom, bom, bom, boom, bom, bom, bom. And I went, you know what, Mike? I would like to call it Good Vibrations. He goes, how's this? I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me the... And it fit to the music. And boom, 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 boom. It went together. And that started out our project Good Vibrations right there.
In my previous video I made on the Beatles track Tomorrow Never Knows, which, as I said in that video, was a high watermark in music and music production at the time, the same can be said for the Beach Boys track Good Vibrations. Good Vibrations highlights the genius of Brian Wilson in that he can make something sound accessible, yet at the same time, if you dig deeper, you find all these interesting layers throughout the song. So let's dig a little deeper into this track. Just a side note, I shall be recreating the track in places due to copyright and all that jazz. Good Vibrations was originally included to be on the Pet Sounds album, but due to the time it took to complete the track, it didn't make the album. Honestly, I don't think it fits Pet Sounds. I think it fits Smile better because it has that kind of same vibe as Smile, and I think it's quite a good closing track for Smile. The first session for Good Vibrations took place on the 17th of February 1966 at Gold Star Studios. It was logged as a Pet Sounds session. Brian, as he had done on Pet Sounds, continued to use players from the Wrecking Crew. The Wrecking Crew, also known as the Click and the First Call Gang, was a loose collective of American session musicians based in Los Angeles who played on many studio recordings in the 1960s and 1970s, including hundreds of top 40 hits. Brian loved the records that Phil Spector made, and a big part of that sound was the Wrecking Crew, so he decided he wanted them for Beach Boys records. The first album they played on was 1965's Today. Some of the members of the Wrecking Crew that played on Beach Boys records are Hal Blaine, Carol Kaye and Don Randy. It's really incredible when you look at the amount of hit records that the Wrecking Crew played on. So they played on Be My Baby by the Ronettes. They played on River Deep, Mountain High by Ike and Tina Turner. Monday, Monday, the Mamas and the Papas. Something Stupid by Frank and Nancy Sinatra. The interesting thing about Something Stupid that actually connects to the Beach Boys is the person who wrote it, Carson Parks, is actually Van Dyke Parks' brother. People who know the Beach Boys know that Van Dyke Parks wrote the lyrics on Smile. But yeah, the Wrecking Crew played on so many great tracks. There's a really good documentary on the Wrecking Crew. If you haven't seen it, I suggest you check it out. Good Vibrations was reported to have used over 90 hours of tape. One estimate of the overall production costs are between $50,000 and $75,000. It took 17 sessions to complete the track and was recorded in 4 different studios, which are Western, Columbia, Gold Star and Hollywood. Though on the box set, the Smile box set, it says that some of it was recorded at Sunset Sound. It's really interesting hearing the progression of Good Vibrations. So I suggest anyone who hasn't heard them go listen to the Smile Sessions box set, which has a lot of sessions from Good Vibrations. Good Vibrations uses many instruments such as flute, theremin, cello, harmonica and much more. When we get to the recreation part of the video, I've used some of those instruments. I don't have every instrument, but the ones I have, I've used. So there's a mixture of organic instruments and virtual instruments. Creating music is very similar to painting because you're using different colors. You know, different instruments have different colors and different sounds have different colors. So you're kind of just painting, really. And yeah, I like the way Brian painted, let's put it that way. But I think one of the important instruments of Good Vibrations is the theremin, or more specifically, the electrotheremin. The electrotheremin, or the tannerin, played on Good Vibrations, was created by Paul Tanner and Bob Whitesell. As well as being one of the inventors of the electrotheremin, Paul Tanner also played it on Good Vibrations, and he had previously played it on I Just Wasn't Made for These Times. The electrotheremin differs than the traditional theremin. It's actually easier to play an electrotheremin. The instrument features a tone and portamento similar to that of a theremin, but with a different control mechanism. It consists of a sine wave generator with a knob controlling the pitch, placed inside a wooden box. The pitch knob is attached to a slider on the outside of the box with some string. I was able to use my trusty electro theremin to try and recreate the sound that's used in Good Vibrations. Another important instrument on Good Vibrations is the cello that plays on the chorus, because it adds movement to the track. This was Van Dyke Park's idea to have a cello playing triplets.
It started out that I was brought in as a lyricist on Smile, and yet I had instrumental ideas that I suggested, for example, a cello for the triplets on the chorus of Good Vibrations. That became a problem for the Beach Boys. Mike Love, of course, had said, famous quotation that what do we have a cello for? Nobody in the group plays cello.
Good Vibrations begins in the key of E flat minor. The first modulation happens at the end of the first verse when the track modulates from E flat minor to G major mixolydian via D flat 7. The chorus modulates from G flat major, then to A flat major, and then to B flat major, which brings the track back with the perfect cadence modulation to E flat minor key in the second verse. The interlude section, which opens with the honky-tonk piano, stays in the key of B flat major. The song then changes in tempo and key when the Hammond organ appears in the key of F major. The final chorus uses a descending progression, which mirrors the ascending progression of the previous two choruses. There follows a short section of vocalizing in three-part counterpoint that references the original refrain by reproducing upward transposition. However, this time it settles on A flat, which is the concluding key of the song. By the end of Good Vibrations, all 7 scale degrees of the opening E flat minor tonic are activated on some level. So at 6 seconds, there sounds like there's a dropout. There's been different theories about what caused that dropout. I remember reading on a forum where someone was saying that Mark Lynette said it was to do with the Leslie cabinet when it was rotating. But I think the one that makes most sense is actually Stephen Desper, who worked with the Beach Boys. He explained that the mono mixdown of the tape was damaged when it accidentally spooled off the hub onto the floor. Carl and Brian frantically tried to press out the damaged section with their fingers, but couldn't get the creases out. When the instrumental mixdown was transferred to one track of the A track for vocals at Columbia Studios, the playback head didn't make proper contact with the tape in the damaged area, resulting in the muffled instrumental section from about 6 seconds to 15 seconds being transferred to the multitrack. Before the days of digital recording, records were recorded to tape. So if you wanted to do an edit, you would have to splice, which is cut the tape, and then you would rejoin it with adhesive. There are 2 moments in Good Vibrations where there's abrupt tape splices. One is at 141 and the other is at 214. I think it really adds to the vibe of the track, just where it's spliced. Even though it was recorded in multiple studios, in different studios, rooms have their own sound, it still sounds really cohesive as a track. The sections that I recreated of Good Vibrations, I tried to keep them in sound closer to the original, then we'll say doing a modern sounding Good Vibrations. Like the original, I kept my recreations in mono. To me, the playing of the track is a little bit loose, and I mean that in the best possible way. It's not like sloppy by any means, but it's a little loose, which I think works well with the vibe of the song. So I tried to recreate that when I was trying to recreate the sections of the tracks. Good Vibrations opens with Carl Wilson's vocal, a Hammond organ played through a Leslie cabinet, and a Fender bass. The bass is played with a pick and it's been pan muted. The bass line's playing a counter melody to the vocal. I love the colorful clothes you wear. To recreate the bass sound, I use my Jazz Fender bass with a pick, pan muted. I put it straight through the DI. I EQ'd it. With regards to EQ, I have 6 dB at 5K. I have 9 dB at 3K, and I have 4 dB at 100 hertz. And it's going through my DBX 568 compressor at about 3 to 4 dB gain reduction. There's more than one bass on Good Vibrations. On the verses, there's 2 basses. There's the pick bass and the double bass. There's also a fuzz bass that plays in different sections of the song. The walking bass line in the chorus, every time I see people play it, and every time I see even tablature of it, it's always played that. Doom, doo, 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 doo. But when I separated the song into stems, you can hear that it's playing this. And here is the stem from the recording. The Beach Boys used a Hammond organ fed through a Leslie cabinet. I don't have a Hammond organ, nor do I have a Leslie cabinet, but I do have some virtual instruments. I used an M-Tron Pro Hammond organ just kind of messing around, and I liked the sound of it because the original Hammond organ virtual instrument that I was using sounded really close to the Beach Boys recording when I put the Leslie cabinet on and tweaked the settings. So I thought, shit man, maybe copyright, you never know. Not saying it sounded exactly like it, but you just never know. As I don't have a Leslie cabinet, I used a Leslie cabinet plugin, which is a really good one from IK Multimedia. I've used it on a few things. I think it's really good. For the percussion, I used my Ludwig kit. I didn't really EQ it that much. I just took a bit of low end off the snare drum because it was really bassy. And I used my tambourine and my shaker and my sleigh bells for the other percussion things. I don't have a jaw harp. There's a jaw harp used on one of those interludes. I don't have that. And I don't have a VST for it. On the verses of Good Vibrations, there's woodwinds. Unfortunately, I don't have any flutes or piccolos here, so I used the Swam Flute VST, which is actually a really good sounding virtual instrument. You can do some kind of cool stuff. They use physical modeling rather than the sampled bass modeling. For the cello, I had initially played a cello VST, but I just don't think these sound great. They sound fine. They sound fine, don't get me wrong, but they do not sound like a real person playing. Not yet anyways. Some things you can get away with, but for something like that, where you're playing these triplets, it just doesn't sound amazing. I don't think it sounds amazing. And I remember thinking, I've heard that cello isolated somewhere before. And then I thought, oh, it's in the Love and Mercy movie. So I had to isolate the cello because there was chatter in the back. And then I edited it. And then I pitched it up with regards to the modulation. So I kept pitching it up with regards to modulation. So yeah. So it's a real cello, but I messed about with it. To recreate the electro-theremin on the chorus, I used my theremin, which is a traditional theremin and an electro-theremin in one. For the tack piano on the interlude sections, I used the Cine Samples Abbey Road plugin, and I used the J37 delay, which is a tape emulation, but I used just the delay on that tape emulation. For the harmonica, I played a harmonica and I just put it through a stock DAW reverb. For the shaker sound in this section, I used those ice cream sprinkles. They make great shakers. I always use them as shakers. And then I used some sleigh bells. But you can also kind of use jewellery too. It's cool if you double a shaker with a jewellery and kind of put underneath it. It gives this kind of cool sound. a big part of the Beach Boys sound is the harmonies, which are just amazing. And you cannot really replicate that with just one voice, you know, me doing all the harmonies and stuff like that. But I did it on the bridge and it's okay. You just can't replicate that sound. It's their sound. It's an amazing sound. But yeah.
Gotta keep those love good vibrations are happening with her. Gotta keep those love good vibrations are happening with her. Gotta keep
Here I will play a bit of the full recreations of the track. I'm not saying I got super close. I think it sounds pretty decent. And that was my video on Good Vibrations. Brian Wilson, what a legend. What a great track. It was fun trying to recreate it. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care. Thank you.
Gotta keep those love good vibrations are happening with her. Gotta keep those love good vibrations are happening with her.